All right, recording in progress. Let's try another wave of reacts. So to welcome the recording. And as we're moving into our featured event, which is going to be a panel discussion between Sara and some of our volunteers on the Venezuela project. Alex and Pablo have been working really hard on a fundraising project in Venezuela. Pablo couldn't be here today, unfortunately. There's a family incident that came up, so we'll just be running it together with Sara and Alex. And I think I'll just go ahead and pass it off to Sara and Alex then. I'm going to go ahead and give you both the spotlight and the floor.
Sure, thank you. So this is one of the projects going on in the background for the last number of years that I think has had me the most inspired. So I wanted to make sure we had a chance to share it with the larger group. But we recently submitted a grant to the Venezuela Rising Fund to work on star voting, redemocratization, and a number of things. So we've got Alex here, and without further ado, Alex, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Hi there. Yeah, I started working with Star Voting when I watched a video of Sara comparing other voting methods. Before that, I was also working, doing activism with ranked choice voting. Locally here, they were trying to pass that voting method in Clearwater City, and we went to the city hall, but the governor banned all those systems. Has been the case for many other states. Then I learned later, as I was saying, about how much better is Star voting. That was 5 years ago when Sara was invited into a interview comparing different voting methods. That was, if I recall, that was the Nerf for Humanities podcast. So I was so excited about this system that right away I started posting things in X, Twitter back then. Later, I joined the Slack, and then since then, I've been working together with them. I have a unique situation in which I grew up in Venezuela. I was born and grew up there, and I have lived my life, half my life there and half my life here. So one of the things that motivated me the most is going through the experience of losing your country, losing democracy, and that's because of the issues with voting methods. Back in Venezuela, we had also the same issues here with duopoly. Two parties dominated everything until everything collapsed under extreme populist authoritarian regime that has lasted 27 years, and basically 9 million people emigrated because the situation was unbearable. So that marked me for life, and this is something that I can do to improve things, is doing some activism to improve democracy. That's the way I see it. And besides start voting, I'm abdicating and being activist in other stuff, improving democracy. But this is probably one of the easiest things that makes more sense. Later on, since January, as you might know, the United States opposed the Maduro, the dictator, and that has opened up opportunities to start from anew. I think the political class is receptive for changes, and that's when we see the opportunity. And this is something that we cannot let it pass. And we're working because hard on this because in about 1 year is the incoming first democratic elections in a while. So we want to introduce star voting, or we are promoting star voting as the solution to have much better democracy, something that we can be proud of. And if we can achieve that, that Venezuela will become the first country in adopting star voting. And basically, that's where I'm coming from and what we are.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that you brought to the grant proposal was kind of a roadmap for a best case scenario of including voting method reform in Venezuela's new constitution, since there is a new constitutional drafting process that's starting now. Do you want to share more about that?
Yeah, basically, there are calls to remake the constitution. And The voting method is encoded in the Constitution, and so if we want to change that, we have to change an article in the Constitution, and to do so, we have to convince a lot of people, especially if it's going to be from top down, that this is what we need and what are the advantages of voting reform. And to me, it's a win-win reform for everybody. So I have no idea other than there's no political will, but other than that, I don't see any reason why anybody will reject this superior voting method. And so basically, there are two ways to do it. One is from the top down, which is the Electoral Commission plus the National Assembly decide that we have to do that as our first election in next year. If they decide to do that, they will find ways to make it, because transitions are not really, you don't follow exactly the Constitution. That's the way they go. And that's a chance to do it really fast. The other option, which is the constitutional proper way, is from the bottom up, because to change in our particular constitution, in order to change an article, you need, how do you call these people to vote in it. And if you pass for more than 50%, then the change can be enacted and then can be done. So we have two methods, and that's what we're planning, and that's what we're working on. Basically, our rules are communicating, educating people, motivating them, showing why we need to start voting. And that's our campaign, that's our work. And that's why we need that grant money, because it takes some resources to mobilize that kind of people.
Yeah. We are our two leaders really of this Venezuela project have been you and also Pablo. Pablo wasn't able to be here today, but he is a professor of political science at a university in Venezuela. He's been teaching remotely and is planning to move back. But one of the things he's been doing is using star voting with his students and then working with his political science students, building a larger coalition and getting involved with other stakeholders and leaders in the country, especially in the academic space. So I just wanted to share a bit of that. One of the things that we have in the grant is at the next elections, when those do happen, eventually we want to do star voting exit polling. So we would actually have volunteers out around the country and focusing on a specific district of Caracas. But that would allow participants to fill out their ballots with star voting, having just voted in the real election. So we could actually see how people might vote with a more nuanced ballot, and also give them a chance to experience what it might feel like to have more choice.
Exactly. And there was another project that involves, it was at the college level for political science students. So they act or actually have something to vote and practice and experience for themselves how it is to vote and how satisfied they are compared to the first past the post, for instance. So that will be great because a lower scale, and it has to be done before any changes. We need to convince people before a referendum. And these two activities will help us create that. So this is something that actually can be replicated anywhere else. This can be done here in the United States too, with college, with university students on political science, and do some voting as if it's a real deal, voting on something, but obviously it's just a test. So they get to experience firsthand. So we can actually, if we ever do this, we can, with our findings, we can translate that experience to other places. And we have been talking to Sara that it's not only, we are basically confined to the United States, but I told her that in Latin America, there are also opportunities that show up, and then not necessarily Venezuela, but we can also work on those countries once the opportunity presents. Because what I have seen is you can either push something, but if the conditions are not there, you're going to waste a lot of energy and get nothing in return. rather than if you know where to apply all these energies, where the opportunity presents, then it'll be a better outcome or more chances to get it done. So yeah, that is one of our focus on Venezuela, because it opens the door for another trials or another attempts in the rest of, I don't know, there are like dozens of other countries in Latin America that we can do this too. And once we get that ball rolling, it'll be easier to do it in Canada or Europe or anywhere else, especially in the United States.
Yeah. So the grant has been submitted, the plan and some of the seed parts of the plan are already underway, but there are areas where we would love more volunteer help. We've been working on upgrading all of our Star Voting and Equal Vote Coalition educational content. And Alex was the one who made our Votación Estrella video that features some Looney Tunes characters, and hopefully you all have seen it or shared it. I think it's worth a watch with captions, even if you don't speak Spanish, because it turned out really cute and it's really well put together. But if you or anyone you know does speak Spanish, we'd love help with translation and adaptation of resources.
Yeah, you can count on me if you need that. Yeah, I also created, I know you haven't seen it, the GIF animated ballot that shows a pencil and creative different styles, and they are over there in the video samples. Yeah, I really like that. It shows in one image basically what it is, and how simple it is.
Yeah, and those are perfect. They're just visual, so anyone in any language can benefit. We share those all the time. Arnd, I wanted to check in how we're doing for time. Obviously, we have more things we could talk about here, but
Yeah, so you have a 20-minute slot and you have 6 minutes left, and you're welcome to use that continuing to discuss, or there's also a question in the chat if you want to do more of a Q&A during that period. That's also good.
sure, let's go with the chat question.
Great. So a question from Harley in the chat is, or you know what, Harley, do you want to come off mute for a second to go ahead and ask it?
Yeah. First things first. I until this meeting, I didn't know the Venezuela project existed. I know we had a lot of time, so I'll keep it brief. But just given everything that you and Venezuela has been through, it means quite a bit to have you and the entire Venezuela team here. You've seen votes splitting on those issues kind of come at their worst. But anyway, we're strapped for time. I could talk about that all day. The question I had was just to clarify: when you say you need a vote to change an article in the Constitution, is that the vote by the people? Is that by politicians like Venezuela's equivalent of Congress? Or who exactly is making that vote to change the article?
The Constitution say that to change that article, you have to have a referendum, right? And for a general election. But in order to do that, it'll be difficult in the current situation because we are going through a transition. Transitions are really crazy. If you talk to a political scientist, they will tell you anything can happen. You don't follow everything by the rules. You have to make sometimes shortcuts. And we were hoping that that kind of shortcut, we take advantage of that. If we can find or we can convince a bunch of decision makers that this is a superior way to go, there are people that are really inspired. They want to actually to be an example, make Venezuela an example of a country that went from a third world shithole dictatorship to an example of democracy. People are inspired by that, and this is something that we can have. Why not? It's just a paper ballot design. That's what it is. All you need is that constitution change. So yeah, basically there are two. That one, there is a shortcut that it might come, it might not, but we have to try it. And the other is the formal way, which requires a referendum. And for that, we need the grassroots because we need to convince a lot of people. But I'm hopeful that at least we can try it with a small sample of college students. So they become if they get experience, they probably become activists in this organization too. There are potential that they like it and they understand it better. So that's a recruiting opportunity too. So it's a win-win situation for that. So I'm looking forward to do that. And that's something we're planning to do in the next month or two. Because if there's going to have if we're going to have an election, it's going to be for December. So yeah, this is Venezuela. Finalize this. Venezuela is just a place or where the opportunity to do election reform is there. Basically, that's what it is. That's the importance of it.
Yeah, strike while the iron is hot.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And one last kind of anecdote I think is interesting. The way that this project launched onto the scene and first caught my attention is that I started seeing a lot of traction on social media in Spanish talking about star voting. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? And then Alex reached out and was like, there's a commission right now, and this was a couple of years ago in Venezuela, that is putting together a team to organize the next opposition primary. So that was a primary that was held for all the candidates who wanted to run against Maduro, the sitting president. And that commission had watched some YouTube videos, was made up of a bunch of leading political scientists who already were really well versed on this issue. But they wanted to look at, is there a voting method without vote splitting, with decentralized tabulation, that we can use to find one standard bearer instead of having people from a dozen other parties all challenging Maduro in the general election? And so, Alex, you emailed the head of the commission, and within a couple hours, I think it was like late over the weekend, by first thing in the morning, Venezuela time, which is earlier, we were on a call with them doing a consultation with that commission. And at the time, they ended up feeling like they weren't quite ready to go with star voting because it hadn't been adopted elsewhere yet. But there was a lot of traction there. That was their preferred method. So we also presented about approval voting as another viable option that we recommended. And for that election, they did go with plurality, and the rest is history. But there's already quite a lot of networking that's been done among political stakeholders. So we're not really coming from the outside or starting from scratch on this.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
are
that
at
work
time
paid
now.
off.
We are at time now for this section. Yeah, any final sentences before we head to the next portion?
Yeah, I was trying to say that work paid off because it was not wasted. Once we did that, like Sara said, we created a network. There are people now in Venezuela, a few, that are aware of this method that exists. So next time we come around, it's easier for us to sell it. So yeah, this work never gets wasted, no matter where you do it.
Amazing. Love that. All right. I think we'll go ahead and move on to the next section. Let's have a round of reactions for our panelists. Sara and Alex, thank you so much. So yeah, this was really great. I think really inspiring for everybody. And yeah, really appreciate both.